Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show, presented as always by 24/7 Sports. I'm Emily Proud, he's Blair Angulo, and you might notice something different. We're together in the same studio. We are in Fort Lauderdale at CBS Sports HQ getting ready for our big show tomorrow, 9-hour signing day show. Much more on that in a bit, but first, thank you so much for being here with us. We have an awesome show for you, and that, of course, includes some viewer questions, as it always do. So please submit them in the chat, and we will answer them later in the show. But let's get it rolling with some in-person headlines. How about this? We begin with breaking news. Just minutes ago, Kaydn Proctor announcing that he has flipped from Iowa to Alabama. What happened here?
Yeah, talk about kicking off signing day with a 5-star flip, right? This is the classic case of Nick Saban flexing his recruiting muscle. We always wondered, what kind of things would he have up his sleeve? What would he do closer to signing day? How about this? The #1 rated offensive tackle in the 2023 class, the #3, obviously, player that's committing there right now. And he's a tremendous prospect, a player that the Alabama Crimson Tide could potentially have an instant impact contributor.
Certainly hope he does. He has been committed since, for almost an entire year, since the summer. Crazy on that. More on Alabama in just a bit. Meanwhile, more flip news here. Dante Moore, the #3 overall player in the 2023 class, has flipped his commitment from Oregon to UCLA. He was locked in with the Ducks since July, but took that kind of surprise last-minute visit out to LA earlier this month. And apparently that was enough. When he signs that Bruin LOI tomorrow, he will be UCLA's highest-ranked QB signee ever. Blair, you followed this recruitment closely. Why'd he flip?
Yeah, I think it was the relationship that he developed late in the process with Chip Kelly, with Ryan Gunderson, the quarterbacks coach there. And obviously you have to look at Kenny Dillingham leaving Oregon to be the head coach at ASU. That also contributed to things. Emily, he becomes the first 5-star for the Bruins under Chip Kelly and the first one for UCLA since Jalen Phillips and Darnay Holmes in the 2017 class.
Oh my goodness. All right, more on what this means for the Ducks and the Bruins later in the show. Meanwhile, in some portal news, the #1 quarterback in our 24/7 Sports rankings has found a home. Former NC State quarterback Devin Leary committing to Kentucky with Will Levis off to the NFL. Where can Leary take this team? In addition, Ray Davis also headed there from Vanderbilt.
Yeah, he gives them obviously an instant impact player, and it means that for the second straight year, Kentucky takes a transfer quarterback and makes up for some misses in the 23 class. They offered over 20 quarterbacks in this 2023 recruiting cycle, but they end up with the #1 transfer player at that position.
Not too shabby. Elsewhere in the portal, Travis Hunter, you may have heard of him, the top player in our 2022 recruiting rankings, is now the #1 portal player. He's just used to being on top there. The early favorite is, of course, for him to follow Deion Sanders to Colorado. But our portal expert, Chris Hummer, is reporting that Georgia will make a push for the Peach State native. Blair, everyone will be interested in this guy, but in a Colorado versus the field, who would take it?
Well, Emily, you traveled here, I traveled here. Did you bring your Louis luggage?
I don't own any, so no.
Well, that's
Did you?
That's who I'm going with.
Okay.
And that's the only connection that I have to Louis is with Deion Sanders. I think you have to look at what Deion Sanders wants to do in Colorado, and that's to make a splash. And what better way to do that than to bring in Travis Hunter for the second consecutive recruiting cycle? So I am taking the Buffs against the field.
That would certainly be a splash. Sticking with flips here, 4-star quarterback Marcel Reed flipping his commitment last night from Ole Miss to Texas A&M, an SEC West flip after he was committed to the Rebs since April. So now the Aggies spring into the top 15 adding him. How big a win is this for Jimbo?
A really good finish for Jimbo, considering how much of a roller coaster quarterback recruiting was in this cycle for them. The Aggies had that early commitment from Eli Holstein, who intends to sign with Alabama, but they also made runs at Malachi Nelson, at Jaden Rashada, at Pierce Clarkson, and obviously getting Marcel Reed this close to signing day is a really, really good get late for them.
So close to signing day. That is why we have so much news. So when we have news, who do we talk to about it? Let's go out to where the show is typically headquartered. That's out in Nashville to catch up with our director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, first off, the breaking news, Kaydn Proctor flipping to Alabama. What can you tell us?
Well, I think he took that last visit to Alabama, but this is one that's kind of been trending to Alabama down the stretch. It's an opportunity for him to go play for a national championship contender. on a team that's got a humongous need on the offensive line. You're talking about Alabama. They're going to lose 4 starters up front at the point of attack. They've had several other guys go into the portal. They need ready-made body types at the offensive line position, which are hard to find to come in and play right away. So Kaydn Proctor became a massive priority down the stretch. Alabama wins out for him. He had a great visit this past weekend, guys. Really fits in with the guys on the team in the locker room. Booker, J.C. Latham, Ty Simpson, some of the guys he hung out with on his latest trip to Tuscaloosa. He wants to compete against the best in practice. He's going to get a chance to line up against guys like Keon Keeley and Yanze Pierre in practice, 2 of the best in the 2023 class at rushing the passer. And so I think all those things check the box for him. He also said he wanted to go into a class where he wasn't the only blue chipper. He wasn't the only 5-star, wanted to be around some guys that have the same stature as him. So I think all that added up to being Alabama. There was a time during the fall in November where it looked like maybe Oregon was going to flip Kaydn Proctor. Adrian Clem did a good job recruiting him, but Alabama's big need at the position, what that program's been since Nick Saban's been there, and his relationship with the guys in the locker room, get it done for Alabama. Kaydn Proctor headed to Tuscaloosa.
Steve, it's really tough for 5-star prospects, for true freshmen to make an impact right away. But what traits do you like in Kaydn Proctor to be able to go into Tuscaloosa and be a steady contributor like you mentioned earlier?
Well, I think you start with the fact that he's 6'6", 330 pounds. He's already physically ready to get into Alabama and contribute from that standpoint. Then you look at the short area quickness, the burst he has, the power and tenacity he plays the position with. He's got a multi-sport profile, and it translates to the way he plays in the trenches. He's got good feet. He can bend. Like I said, he's explosive, and he's physically ready to go. Some of these offensive linemen need a couple years in the hopper to get ready from a strength standpoint. Kaydn Proctor certainly has a lot of evolution to go in his own game, but already starts off with a very high floor.
All right. Meanwhile, it's the final countdown for 5-star Matayo Uiagalelei. You've said it's between Ohio State, Oregon, and USC in a battle for the edge defender. So what's the latest with him?
Yeah, well, our colleague Greg Biggins has been on top of that recruitment. And talking to Greg earlier this week, he thinks that there's a lot of momentum with USC and staying home, and things are picking up with Lincoln Riley and company. But I know that Oregon's still in there, having dialogue with them. I think that's a program that he likes a lot. He's been to Eugene several times, including a game this year. Dan Lanning's track record of developing players and developing defenses and helping turn Georgia into a powerhouse program is something that's exciting to Matayo. And then he has a lot of family members around that program as well. And then Ohio State, they've been considered the leader for longer than anybody, and it's because of Larry Johnson and the track record he has with developing players, particularly 5-star recruits and high-ranking players. It's a place where he feels like if he chose Ohio State, he would for sure maximize his potential as a defensive lineman in addition to playing in big ball games. So, we'll see what happens with Matayo as he goes to announce. That's one of the ones that is more up in the air, in my opinion.
Steve, there's a lot going on with Oregon. You mentioned them as a suitor for Matayo Uiagalelei, but you also have guys like Caleb Presley, Jaden Lamar, and a number of other players that are in consideration for the Ducks as we approach signing day. What's the latest on some of those prospects?
Well, one guy that I think that they're trying to take a big swing at here late in the process is top 247 quarterback Austin Novosad. He's a guy that has a long-standing relationship with offensive coordinator Will Stein, who made his way to Eugene from UTSA, where he helped UTSA have a top 10 offense in the country. I think that Oregon's in terrific position to flip 4-star running back Jaden Lamar from Notre Dame. They had him on campus at the end of the cycle. And Solomon Davis is a crystal ball pick out of California. And Dalen Austin's another player, top 247 defensive back, currently committed to LSU, that I think Oregon has some momentum with down the stretch. Ashton Porter's a 4-star defensive lineman. We like Oregon for. But Austin Novosad, that would certainly be a big pickup for them guys. I think that he's still talking with Oregon. I'm not predicting that he's going to flip from Baylor right now, but I do think that they have some inroads with him. And for them to be able to add a top 100 quarterback after losing Dante Moore would be pretty big. They have Bo Nix coming back next year, but it would be nice to get the guys that are battling for the heir apparent in there right now so they can start learning the offense.
Definitely a need for quarterback down the road. Meanwhile, Georgia has the #2 class and are still looking to add to that. Kirby Smart battling for Damon Wilson, Daniel Harris, Jordan Hall, and a bunch of others. So where do things stand with the Dogs the day before signing day?
I think they've really solidified the #2 class in the country. I think it's going to be a fun day for Georgia tomorrow. Logged the 24/7 Sports crystal ball earlier today for the Bulldogs in favor of Damon Wilson. I think that the 24/7 Sports composite 5-star edge has been trending towards Athens for a few weeks now. The opportunity to play in the SEC, his relationship with Coach Chid and company. I think the culture of Georgia football and their track record of player development is really standing out to him. Daniel Harris and Kyron Jones are a couple defensive backs that I think will end up in the fold for them. And then 4-star defensive lineman Jordan Hall. He's going to announce with us on Thursday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And although Alabama, Florida State, and LSU have come hard, I like where Georgia stands with Jordan Hall.
Steve, you love the spatula season, right? It's flip season, especially with signing day. And, yeah, are you okay?
Yeah, I was hoping that they'd mute me while I'm not on camera here, but it's all good.
We need you, Steve. We need you. Sorry, go ahead, Blair.
He's been working the phones
really
nonstop. DeAndre Moore is a player that's been on Flip Watch for a number of weeks now. It sounds like Texas is making a really strong charge there, but Louisville, Steve, isn't going down without a fight.
No, absolutely not. They continue to have dialogue with Moore's family. And while I do think that this one is trending towards Texas, and we've kind of written that the last few weeks, Louisville doing all they can to keep him in the fold. And remember, Blair, when he committed to Louisville the first time, there were a lot of people that thought he would end up at Texas. So Louisville's won this battle once before. We'll see if they can find a way to pull it out here at the end. There's a lot of momentum for Texas here. And the race for the #3 class is the one that's kind of exciting. You got Miami in that hole right now, but Texas and LSU are there in striking distance, and DeAndre Moore would be a big addition for Texas here as they recruit the last couple guys on their board.
All right, let's go back to the Dogs. I have more Georgia questions here. 4-star offensive lineman Bo Hewley has been committed to his in-state school since September, but he has entertained some other programs, including Colorado, very hot right now. So what's the likelihood of a flip here?
Yeah, I think that he's going to end up sticking with Georgia. I know Colorado was a place that was exciting for him to go out there and visit and hang out with Coach Deion Sanders and that new staff. And I think he had a good time and sees a program that's going to be on the rise. But I think Georgia, they held off Auburn. They held off LSU. They held off Nebraska. He took a couple visits to Lincoln, Nebraska throughout his recruitment. I think here in the end, he's locked in with Georgia. And I think that Georgia has a flawless day lined up. With 4 targets still out there trending their way, and I don't really have anyone in their class on Flip Watch.
Staying in the SEC, Steve, Kedrick Falk, Tony Mitchell, a couple of players that are being, in a way conversated about when it comes to Auburn. What are you hearing on the Tigers and their potential for a big day on signing day?
Yeah, Auburn could be swinging a big spatula on signing day, guys. And again, it's a credit to Zach Etheridge and Cadillac Williams when they were part of the interim staff that kind of held it together, maintained relationships with top targets for the new staff to come in, Hugh Freeze and company. He retains Cadillac and Zach Etheridge, and here they are. They're in the mix for some big-time flips at the end. Tony Mitchell, longtime commit to Alabama, also looking at Texas A&M. But it looks like Auburn has some good momentum with Tony Mitchell here at the end of the process. Kedrick Falk visits Florida State Friday and Saturday, longtime commit to the Seminoles, comes back to Auburn on Sunday and looks at them one more time. And I'm hearing that Auburn is still in the middle of that one as we talk right now at 4:14 Central Time. And then Kaydn Lee is a defensive back, longtime commit to Ohio State. That Ohio State's kind of held off Auburn a couple times, but I don't know if they're going to hold them off the last time. Those two teams are going back and forth coming into the last day. So Auburn, they got their spatula out for some top 2-4-7 flips. They landed a quarterback today in Hank Brown out of Lipscomb Academy here in the Nashville area. A 75% passer, state champ, was committed to Hugh Freeze at Liberty. A guy that they're very, very familiar with. I think that was an exciting late pickup for Auburn today as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're always keeping our eyes on the quarterback dominoes. They just continue to fall. So how about 4-star Austin Novosad? He's been committed to Baylor for over a year now, but of course, this is what happens this time of year, a little bit of rumblings of a potential flip. So where do things stand with him?
Yeah, I think that Oregon is a program that he's giving a good hard look to at the end of the cycle. Texas A&M and TCU were a couple schools that tried to get involved late. He's been committed to Baylor for over a year. During the summer, he entertained Notre Dame and Ohio State and Texas A&M before choosing to stick with Baylor. Here he is again at the end of his process, dotting his I's, crossing his T's, making sure of his decision. And I think Oregon has his attention. A lot of the reason being offensive coordinator Will Stein and Austin Novosad go back to before Austin was even in high school. They've worked together. And Will Stein had one of the best offenses in college football at UTSA. The trajectory of Oregon's program with Dan Lanning and the excitement they had this season, knocking on the door of the Pac-12 title game. Oregon's going to have a big need at quarterback following this season, and I think Austin Novosad sees opportunity there. Is Oregon going to flip them? We'll see what happens, but I do think that they are a contender right now, guys.
Steve, there's always something really interesting that happens on signing day, and there's one player in particular in the state of Florida who has some smoke around him. That would be four-star safety Conrad Hussey. He committed to Penn State back in April. What's the latest on him as some SEC schools make a push for him?
Yeah, Florida State's certainly way in the thick of that one. They've made a big impression on him. We got a chance to see him at the Overtime OT7 event this summer, Blair, and he was just a walking interception, just was around the football a ton. He's got terrific athleticism. He's a guy that's part of a Penn State class that has one of the best defensive backfield hauls in the nation, and he's a big part of that right now. So they're trying to hang on to him. But Miami is also in the middle of that one. They got him on campus for a late visit. But Florida State is a program that has certainly also made a move with him. So we'll see if he flips or sticks, but he's a guy that should be on a flip watch.
All right, Steve, that's all we need from you. You can go have a lozenge or some hot tea or something because tomorrow is going to be epic. Thank you so much, as always, for all the great insight.
Yeah.
What's up? You got something?
I was just going to say, yeah, I won't forget the water tomorrow.
Yes,
y'all have a
definitely
good one.
We'll
see you.
Definitely need some water. This was a good warm-up, so now you're prepared because it is going to be a marathon for this. You are going to see a lot more of Steve tomorrow on our all-day, wall-to-wall coverage of National Signing Day. He will be bringing us the breaking news and all the inside information, so do not forget to tune in to our Signing Day show beginning at 9 a.m. right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. With all that time, we plan to hit on many programs, but our friends Cooper Patagna and Andrew Ivins give us some teams to watch for tomorrow.
All right, Andrew, we are less than 24 hours away from National Signing Day. So you know what that means. It's silly season. It's also time to get out the spatula. And Drew, right now, we got our eyes on about 3 teams around the country that could end up making a run here in the last 24 hours or so. And I want to start in the SEC West with a new face, and that is Hugh Freeze. It looks like they got a runway to potentially move into the top 25.
Coop, and this isn't surprising to us. I mean, we saw even with a head coachless Auburn or Cadillac as the interim, I mean, there was always talent on the Plains this season. That's usually the case. Well, this past weekend, Auburn dialed up a huge visitors list, brought a ton of different talent in, already flipped 2 prospects, Steven Johnson, a defensive lineman from Arkansas, Sylvester Smith, a safety from Tennessee. I think they're going to keep that spatula out, and it's something to watch over the next 24 hours. Tony Mitchell, the top 247 defensive back that's committed to Alabama. They'd love to flip him. Kaydn Lee, top 247 corner out of the Peach State. He's committed to Ohio State. Love to flip him. Eric Singleton Jr., a speedy slot receiver, late bloomer. I'm really high on him. He's committed to Western Kentucky, has some ties to Auburn, though. They'd love to flip him. And then Keldrick Falk, the longtime in-state defensive lineman that's been committed to Florida State. He showed up on Sunday for a bit of a surprise visit. I think that's added some intrigue heading into Wednesday for Auburn, which is also crushing it in the transfer portal, picking up different pieces here and there. Devin Leary, the quarterback from NC State, the veteran, he was also at Auburn over the weekend. So I think Auburn, team to watch. I think there's a chance they could push into that top 25 and maybe into the top 20, and that's what Auburn needs to do.
Tigers still looking to close on top 247 defensive lineman James Smith and also top 247 edge Jaquavius Russaw. That would be a big get for them. But Drew, let's go back to Keldrick Falk, that name you talked about earlier. He's been committed to Florida State for quite some time. It's been a really good year. If you've been a Seminoles fan right now, Florida State with the number 18 class in the country, that is 3rd best in the ACC on the field, 9-3. And Drew, they look like a team that's going to be active here over the next day or so as signing day comes to a close.
And we've seen Mike Norvell super active in the transfer portal. Seminoles with the number 3 transfer class right now. But I go back to a conversation I had with Norvell back in September about how he saw the rest of his class shaping up. And he said that they're going to take the best player available. And I think FSU's 9-3 season, let's remember, Miami didn't make a bowl. Florida struggled, just looked pretty bad in the Las Vegas Bowl. I think a lot of people are realizing that. But, FSU is king of the Sunshine State right now from a record standpoint. And the Seminoles are going to try to use that to also flip some prospects. Conrad Hussey, top 247 safety. He's committed to Penn State, took a visit to Miami. But the Seminoles are trying to get him. They're also in on another South Floridian, Edwin Joseph, a talented two-way player. Sounds like they like him at corner. They also like Andy Jean, a longtime Florida commit at corner. And then my guy down in the Conch Republic, Chris Otto. Cooper, I know you probably don't know much about him, but he's a two-way lineman from Key West. FSU has been on him from the jump. Princeton, Stanford, also in the mix for the high academic kids. So I think FSU could have a big day. And I think there's also a chance where, hey, maybe they don't win some of these and it's not as big of a day.
You don't hear a lot of prospects out of Key West, Drew. That's a new one for sure. We'll keep an eye on Cedric Baxter, top 247 running back, committed to Texas. Obviously, that's going to be a heated battle down the line. So, Drew, to finish off here, let's get to prime time out in Boulder, Colorado, as the Buffs have been busy over the last couple of days, and they're looking to close in a flurry here. They have not finished with a class higher ranked than number 35 right now. They're sitting at 60. But, Drew, you got to like the activity and what we've seen out of Deion Sanders the last week or so.
Yeah, it's been hard to kind of pull intel out of Boulder in between the mountains to figure out who all was on campus over the weekend. Deion Sanders played in that Celebration Bowl and then flew in to meet with a bunch of kids in Colorado. It was kind of a who's who. Malachi Coleman, Coop, who me and you both think is one of the freakiest prospects out there. He was there. Sounds like that's a Colorado-Nebraska battle. That's what Steve Wiltfong told me when I spoke with him on the phone Monday morning. That's what he thought it was. They also had Kaydn Wiseman, a quarterback committed to Kansas. I think, Cooper, me and you both think he's a little bit of a gamer, developmental type, but something's there. And then Bo Hewley sneaks in, longtime Georgia commit on the offensive line. Coop, I know you think Bo Hewley is potentially like a first-round guy. He has it there. So I do think they have a chance to sign what could be the best high school class ever in the 24/7 sports era for the Buffs.
All right, a lot to keep our eyes on tomorrow. But I want to know, we got the expert right here in the chair. Who should we pay attention to most tomorrow? Who are you excited to see?
I'm excited to see what Jimbo Fisher has up his sleeve. We already saw what Marcel Reed did earlier in the process a couple of days ago, flipping from Ole Miss. You had Reuben Owens as well, right? The 5-star running back flip from Louisville. And I don't think he's done. I don't think that Jimbo Fisher will try to finish with that. And then USC is another program that I'm going to be looking at really closely. This is a program that has 3 5-stars committed, but they all happened in 2021, Emily. This is such a long time ago that I think we forget how good this class is because we're so far removed from when they made a splash. So I'm looking at USC potentially trying to make some noise as well.
We didn't forget. We still know how exciting this USC class is. And of course, with what Jimbo did last year, we have to expect some fireworks again this year. And if they happen, they will be on our National Signing Day tomorrow. Another reminder, we are live at 9 a.m. and we'll be with you all day until 6 p.m. on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. We'll also be checking in on CBS Sports HQ throughout the day. But if you don't want to miss a moment, join us on YouTube. Well, for the second time in the last 3 years, is it? Alabama is working toward a #1 recruiting class. So let's welcome in a guy who has been documenting this impressive group, and that is Hank South from Bama Online. Hank, stop me if you heard this before. The Crimson Tide are at the top of the recruiting world, but it ain't over yet. How high can this class go? Oh, sounds like we lost Hank there.
Can hear us.
Can I ask you that question? I mean, we saw the historic class last year with Texas A&M. Can Alabama reach that number?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the buzz is so loud at Alabama.
I'm 10, that's why he can't hear us.
Can't hear us. I think that this is the classic case of Nick Saban really proving his worth as a recruiter. Everyone's wondering whether he's done or whether he's washed, or we think back to maybe that beef that he had with Jimbo Fisher as well. Did he take that personal? Like, are we seeing now Nick Saban really taking that to the next level? His recruiting prowess, him stepping on the gas pedal as well. And you look at what they just did with Kaydn Proctor, landing him, getting a player of his caliber this late in the process, where he was committed to Iowa for such a long time, an in-state product, a player that maybe could have been a legend at Iowa. For them to get that this late in the process is obviously monumental, and it's a huge win for them.
Yes, and that was great analysis, as always, from our friend Blair here. But we want to try to go back out to Hank because he is in Tuscaloosa. Hello, Hank. Hopefully this works this time. I want to ask you about Kaydn Proctor. I mean, this is just breaking now. We're all still reacting to it. From your perspective, how big is this a get for the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, what's a live recruiting show without some live recruiting? It's a massive get for Alabama. I think offensive line, defensive line, they're always important positions that you want to hit on each cycle. But with Alabama, especially the last few weeks, we've seen some transfer portal exits from guys like Javion Cohen, who started some games. Tyler Steen's going to go to the NFL, and some other guys have left the room. So they have had a 4-man class entering the day, and have been pushing to get Kaydn Proctor to be that fifth guy, be that one of those bookend tackles that can come in and potentially make an immediate impact next year with really, how much opportunity is there for the taking in Tuscaloosa. So I think it's a massive get, a guy that this staff has really coveted. They kept pushing for. Even when he was committed to Iowa, they never gave up on him. They were able to get him in this last weekend before signing day and got the big win on signing day eve.
Yeah, Hank, I think the fans that are tuning in, they love the intricacies of recruiting, right? They love the behind the curtain stuff. And when you think about the process specifically with Kaydn Proctor, the persistence, the ability to continue that relationship despite his longstanding commitment to Iowa, it sounded like Oregon might have been the flip destination. Take us inside how Nick Saban got this done.
Yeah, what I've been saying for the last few weeks, I think it was really telling. On the first day of the contact period, Nick Saban was in Iowa, and it was a Friday. They had visitors coming in later in the day. You would have, sometimes Nick Saban doesn't even go on the road on Friday. Occasionally, this year, obviously, he was putting in some work, but he was in Des Moines, Iowa, of all places, on a Friday afternoon to see Kaydn Proctor. But beyond that, he committed to Iowa over Alabama. That he was down to 2 in the summer. But the staff led by Freddie Roach, who was his area recruiter, Eric Wolford, who's now about to be in his second year as offensive line coach. They just kept that line of communication open. He wanted to take a visit for a game this season, but obviously, playing on Friday nights in Iowa, then getting down to Tuscaloosa the next day, it's a little challenging. So he wasn't able to do that. He wanted to get out to the Iron Bowl. That couldn't happen. But, what better weekend, 72 hours before National Signing Day to get that last face-to-face contact. And they were able to, win out. Oregon had some confidence, like you said, late. But, Bama, I think, really pitched him on the opportunity, the development, and just the relationship he had with Eric Wolford and the rest of the Alabama staff.
And Hank, you said it. This is the eve of signing day. We haven't even gotten to the big day yet. Alabama, no stranger to being atop of the recruiting world. How high do you think this class can actually get?
Well, I ran some scenarios on the class calculator yesterday, and every scenario kind of finishes them in the mid 320s. So for any class, that could be the class of the century for a lot of schools. For Alabama, that's pretty average what they've been doing the last few years. Obviously the 2021 class broke the record at the time that Texas A&M then surpassed the following year. I think that was 327 something. So I think Bama can get up there. I think they can get in that 327, 329 range. Obviously, that signing cap lifting from 25 gives a lot of schools a lot more flexibility. So, with the additions of the high school kids, they're still recruiting going into tomorrow. Transfer portal additions potentially down the road. I think Bama can really, get close to that upper 325, 330 range when it's all said and done. If things go the way, they hope they go.
All right, let's talk about someone in particular. Desmond Rick, the number 3 corner in the 2023 class, took an official visit to Alabama a couple weeks back. LSU, though, still the crystal ball favorite and hosted him this weekend. Florida also in play. We love these recruiting battles. So where does the Tide currently stand in Rick's recruitment?
Yeah, of all the recruitments that are left to be decided on, this one might have maybe the most mystery, and people have feelings on each of these. But all 3 of those programs, I think, have some degree of confidence with where they stand with Desmond Rick. He reclassified to 2023. All the buzz is really centered on LSU, and I think for good reason. That's kind of been the school in the running for him the longest, it seems. But like you said, he took all 3 of these visits this month. He got some FaceTime with each of the head coaches. Obviously has a lot of respect for each of these programs, and each of these programs could really use him. Alabama is trying to add another top cornerback in this class. If they don't get a guy like Ricks, I think you'll probably see them go after another prep kid, or maybe even look towards the portal with some of the guys they need to replace or need to add to their roster. So I would probably lean towards LSU right now, but again, he's announcing on Thursday. We won't see a decision tomorrow unless we see a Kaydn Proctor style thing happen. No, I think he's going to announce on Thursday, and we'll see if anything changes between then, but all 3 schools are still working on him.
Damari Brown is another highly coveted corner from the state of Florida, Hank, that Alabama is in on. It sounds like it's the Crimson Tide versus the Canes of Miami. What are you hearing on Damari Brown's recruitment?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, if you asked me, I think Bama was sitting in a really good spot. I think it's tightened a lot in the last 48 hours. We saw, obviously, Damari's older brother commit to Miami from the transfer portal from UCF on Monday evening. Devontae, I think that's his name. I'm sorry if I'm not saying it right. But he committed Miami. I think that I don't think they're considered a package deal, but I think that might be the push over the hump for Miami to get Damari Brown to stay home in South Florida. Obviously, they're both Miami legacies as well. That helps, keeping it in the family. But again, American Heritage, a school that Bama has a good track record at. Defensive backs in particular, Patrick Surtain, who's now on the Broncos, Earl Little, who I think we're going to see more action from here next season. So I could absolutely see Damari Brown end up picking Bama, but I think as we get closer to decision day tomorrow afternoon for him, I think maybe things favor Miami a little bit more.
All right, Alabama also targeting Suntarine Perkins as a potential flip. He says he still plans on signing with Ole Miss, but something tells me, though, if Saban gives you a call, he's pretty convincing with his pitch. So, Hank, what's the likelihood he signs tomorrow versus pushing it to February? And if he does that help Alabama's shot to land him?
Yeah, if he waits, I think that's a good sign for Alabama. But Mississippi recruitments are always the wildest recruitments. They always have the most twists and turns. They always involve Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Regardless of how long you've been committed, it's always something. But Suntarine Perkins, he's been a guy that, he looked like he was on the verge of flipping to Bama in the summer. It didn't happen. Kind of looked like he was on the verge of doing it again in October. It didn't happen. And then he comes out a couple weeks ago, like you said, reaffirmed his commitment. And Ole Miss is obviously, they want to wrap this up. They want him to sign tomorrow. And I was told his signing ceremony is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. So I guess that's still the plan. If he does decide to wait, I would anticipate Bama getting him in on an official visit in January. At which point, I think it's anyone's game at that point between Bama and Ole Miss. And he's an absolute player. You can see why Bama and Ole Miss covet him with what he's able to do on both sides of the ball, really, but certainly projecting as a defensive player.
Hank, it appears that tight end is a big need for Alabama here in this class. They hosted Deuce Robinson during the season. He's the number 1 prospect at that position, but won't be signing until February. They have been working, though, on a number of other prospects. What can you tell us about Alabama and tight end recruiting?
Yeah, so there's a couple names that we're monitoring entering Wednesday. Luke has the Arkansas tight end commit. He's been a guy that took an official visit in the summer. Things kind of quieted down. Bama stayed in contact, but during that the beginning of the contact period, we saw Bama's tight ends coach Joe Cox head out to Oklahoma to watch his game. Then we saw Nick Saban go out there the next week, and then Coach Cox went back out there the following. So they took 3 visits out to the state of Oklahoma to visit with Has. They're making sure it's known that he still has a spot in the class if he wants it. And there's been some we've seen some guys leave the Arkansas class. We saw Dal Logan's the former Arkansas assistant take over at South Carolina and their offensive coordinator spot, and that's maybe created an opening and maybe some more of a maybe some uncertainty with Haz's commitment to Arkansas. So, I think that's still being discussed even at this point right now there. But, it's too early to call to say whether he'll flip from Arkansas or not. The other name we're watching is CJ Dupree, the Maryland tight end transfer. That is, he's kind of gone underground after his visits the last few weeks, but Bama did offer him, and looks like a guy that they could actually end up bringing in during the signing period from the portal.
Excited to see what happens tomorrow. We know you will be all over it. Hank, thank you so much. For more Alabama coverage, keep it locked in to Bama Online. Blair, I have a feeling we'll be talking a lot about the Crimson Tide tomorrow, but while I've got you, you've been through a lot of National Signing Days. Is there a moment that stands out to you that we can kind of just reminisce about?
We remember the player who brought out the little live gator or the live puppies, right, when he committed to Georgia. How about when you bring out a rapper that's world famous like Snoop Dogg? Jack Jones did this a number of years ago. He announced his commitment to USC initially, and he brought out Snoop Dogg to basically reveal it. A big USC super fan who used to be around the team during the Pete Carroll era. And then I remember Snoop Dogg as well with his son Cordell Broadus, who was at Bishop Gorman. He committed to UCLA, so imagine being a huge USC fan, having to put on a UCLA jersey. Those are a couple memories that I have about signing day in particular, and just how special it is for these prospects that try to make a huge statement, and what better way to do that than with the OG Snoop Dogg.
Oh my goodness. It kind of gets lost in all the excitement and everything with NIL and flips and all of this, but this is such a huge day for these prospects to be able to finally sign their national letter of intent. And so I am so excited about tomorrow. But as we've been talking about all show, there's been tons of news just getting us ready for tomorrow. We haven't even gotten there yet. And another pre-signing day bombshell, that is Dante Moore headed to UCLA. So let's bring in our national recruiting analyst, Allen Trieu, to give us the backstory on all of this. Allen, we heard some rumblings last week, but there was also speculation about a potential flip to Michigan State at some point in this recruitment. But Chip Kelly with the massive recruiting win. Just tell me, how did they do it?
I think Chip Kelly had a big part in that. I think the history of development, I think the chance to play in his offense had a lot to do with that for Dante. I do think that Kenny Dillingham departing Oregon and going to Arizona State to be their head coach really opened the door. I do think that UCLA had been recruiting Dante for a long time, even after his commitment to Oregon, but things started to ramp up more after Dillingham left for Arizona State. So you combine all of that with now they're going to be in the Big Ten. He's going to have a chance to come back closer to home sometimes and play some games in the Midwest. I think that played a factor, but really I think ultimately it was Chip Kelly, the offense, and the chance to be developed at that position.
Allen, you look at social media, you look at the brand that a lot of these players build within not only their region, but I think nationally. I think he's a household name right now in the recruiting world. How much of an impact does he have with other recruits maybe in the Midwest that maybe weren't open to UCLA, but now look at the Bruins now that Dante Moore will be signing with them?
I think it's going to have a huge impact. He's a big name in the state of Michigan, one of the more higher ranked players to ever come out of the state of Michigan. Certainly quarterbacks coming out of the Detroit Public School League, there haven't been many as highly regarded as him. He's gone out to national events, played on some national 7-on-7 teams, and I think he fits that West Coast LA vibe a little bit. And so I think he's going to have a chance to recruit some players with him, not just from the Midwest, but I think he resonates with other players from around the country. He has that kind of personality. Maybe not the most outspoken guy, but he's a very good recruiter who can connect with other players in his class and beyond.
Also, if I'm a wide receiver or tight end, I want to catch passes from that guy. So he doesn't need to say anything. His game speaks for itself. And a big-time quarterback doesn't just bring great football. He can also influence some of those other domino moves. He's the number 3 player in the class. So do you think that Moore's decision to head out west has the potential to impact other recruits in the Midwest region where he's from to either join him out there or at the very least leave the region and go elsewhere?
So it's going to be a little bit late maybe in this class, but I think moving forward, there will be an impact. And UCLA is starting to creep into the Midwest a little bit. They had a Western Michigan defensive line transfer on campus as well this weekend. They got one from Purdue that's from the state of Michigan. So I do think that Dante's presence will cause other recruits from the state of Michigan and from the Midwest to want to go visit, for sure. I know he has a lot of teammates, former 7-on-7 teammates, that are going to want to go see him play. And so I do think there will be more eyes on UCLA from the state of Michigan. And it doesn't hurt, again, that they're going to be playing in the Big Ten as well.
Yeah, one of those commitments that they got from the transfer portal, Colin Schlee, will be in that quarterback room along with Dante Moore. And then they lose Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the fifth-year senior who had a tremendous season. They also have Ethan Garbers, a former four-star in that room, Justin Martin, another former four-star. But now Dante Moore gets into Westwood, and he could factor into the competition early on. In your opinion, Allen, what makes him a candidate to potentially start right away?
I haven't evaluated many quarterback recruits over the years that are as ready as he is. He stepped in immediately as a freshman and was the starter for a Detroit King team that went to the state championship game, and that wasn't too big for him. He started his first game in a kickoff classic against the perennial state power before he had even taken classes in high school and brought them back nearly to win that game. He's played in 3 state title games. Like I said, he's gone out and played in the LT7 and Elite 11, always been fantastic in that event. He has never looked rattled or looked uncomfortable in any of those situations. He's extremely polished. He makes great decisions. In 3 of those seasons that he played, he only threw 3 interceptions in each of those. So he's smart, he's accurate, he's about as ready as you can be, and he's going to enroll early, so that will give him a chance to get in on the competition right away as well.
Excited to see him play. I'm sure the rest of the Pac-12 excited to see him, but what about the Big Ten? UCLA, of course, joining the conference in 2024. How much momentum does Dante Moore give the Bruins as they make this move?
I don't know that there was a prospect that could move the needle much more for them in the Big Ten. You're talking about the number 1 guy in the Midwest, a guy who is very well known in the Big Ten footprint, and a guy who has a lot of teammates and, like I said, influence over upcoming prospects from the state of Michigan and from the Midwest who will consider the Big Ten. I think it's an astronomically big move for UCLA and a great recruiting job by them to get it happen this late in the cycle.
Allen, thank you so much. As soon as this news dropped, we said we have to call you. You are the guy to give us all the Dante Moore information. Thank you so much. Let's go back here into studio and answer some viewer questions.
Let's do it.
How about it? Thank you guys, as always, for sending them in. This one comes from Ben Hemmer asking, why do you think Kaydn Proctor decided to flip to Alabama?
Well, we heard Steve Wiltfong talk about it. We heard Hank South talk about it, and it had a lot to do with Nick Saban's persistence. He even went out and recruited on a Friday, which he doesn't usually do. You know, that was a huge thing for Kaydn Proctor. He wanted to play alongside some other star-studded cast, other big-time recruits like him. And, you know, I think you look at the development. You look at what they're going to be able to do for him from an NFL standpoint, for him to get to the next level and potentially make an impact on a roster that's really good already. That just speaks to how good of a prospect he is. So you couple all of that, and it's a tough loss for Iowa, but you certainly understand why a player of his caliber is headed to Alabama.
Certainly, he's not the only blue chip prospect playing for Alabama. You understand that. So this one comes from Jason D. Should Oregon go after a 2023 quarterback, or should they wait until 24? If 23, who should they target? You got all that?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, you mentioned the 24 class. I'll start there and I'll say, you now need to hit a home run in 24. You lost Dante Moore so close to the finish line. You were in the mix for a number of other prospects. Now you need to go after the elite of the elite in the 24 class to really cement yourself as a national power again and to bring in a prospect that's going to attract other recruits like Dante Moore was. In the case of the 23, it might be a little bit too late. It sounds like Austin Novosad is a candidate there. You know, is it too late to be able to flip him from Baylor? I think you need to get a quarterback either way. Getting Bo Nix to return to campus was obviously huge for them because they have a ready-made prospect, a proven player that's going to be able to contribute. But I think you need to get a quarterback in 23 and then certainly hit a home run in 24.
Does it feel like a bit of a bittersweet weekend for Oregon fans? You get Bo Nix to come back, but then you lose out on the future in Dante Moore. How should Ducks fans be feeling right now?
I think you have to feel good. I think you still understand that Dan Lanning is just getting started in Eugene, and this is just the beginning for him. And you caught lightning in a bottle for Bo Nix. Remember, he was in a way kind of damaged goods. We didn't really know what to expect out of him when he got to Eugene. He's now in the Heisman conversation for next year. Obviously, he's going to be having a battle against Heisman winner Caleb Williams in the Pac-12 already, but he's already in the conversation. You got to feel good about what Dan Lanning can do, especially considering that he lost his offensive coordinator.
Yeah, a lot of quarterbacks returning in the Pac-12. It'll be interesting to see how Bo Nix does with a new offensive coordinator, too, with outgoing Kenny Dillingham. This next one comes from Tyler Chambers. Do you think DJ and Mateo Uiagalelei are linked in their recruitments?
I don't think so, because we saw Mateo Uiagalelei's recruitment. He wasn't really considering Clemson. So if everything had worked out for DJ at Clemson, I'm not sure Mateo would have ended up there. So I think they're going through their process independently of one another. And it's worth noting, right, that there has been a crystal ball prediction put in for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors to land DJ Uiagalelei from Jackson Moore, our Hawaii insider. So how about that? Staying up, 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast to watch a little DJ action out on the islands. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you wonder, too, we just talked about the Pac-12 quarterbacks, how much those guys staying and the quarterback dominoes and everything influenced potential destinations for DJ. This next one comes from Stephen G. Where will Peyton Bowen sign? $1 million question.
Is that our guy, Stephen G., who asks us about Peyton Bowen every week?
Probably. He's a big fan.
Big fan.
What's your team, Steven? Do we need to say your team?
The more and more we get closer to signing day, the more and more it feels like he's drifting away from Notre Dame. I've maintained that faith in Marcus Freeman being able to close on Peyton Bowen, but there's a lot of smoke around Oklahoma. There's obviously a lot of, I think, attention in his own recruitment, and he hasn't come out and said flat out, I'm going to sign with Notre Dame. He has put out some tweets that have been cryptic and said, hey, there's been some leaks, some misinformation about my recruitment. But until tomorrow, I guess we won't really know what Peyton Bowen is doing, but he's obviously one of the players that has a lot of eyes on his recruitment.
We love dissecting the tweets and the Instagram posts. I'm sure there'll be TikToks at some point. I will say Tom Loy from Irish Illustrated said this, quote, I don't believe this ends well for Notre Dame when talking about Peyton Bowen.
And we have to trust Tom Loy. I mean, I don't think anyone covers the Irish like he does, and I don't know if anyone is tied in as Tom. So, yeah, if that is true, it does sound like maybe Oklahoma or someone else is creeping in there in the shadows.
That's why these long commitments, I know they stress out fans. They stress us out, too, because so much can change and so much can be influenced. This next one comes from Kenny Williams. Will Mike Locksley pull another surprise on signing day for Maryland? We know he loves to do that. We know Kenny Williams loves him some Terps.
If the surprise is Nicholas Harbor, then
be surprised if he committed on.
Yeah. It sounds like he will be going into February with his decision, and they did it last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they have some stuff in the works, because I think they like the drama of signing day. I think they like the spotlight it has on the program, and there has been in the past, Emily, programs hold off on getting announcements out until signing day, knowing that all the headlines are there, knowing that a lot of eyeballs are on the program that day, and that's when you kind of make your noise, and that's when the splash is probably the biggest. So Maryland's certainly one to watch for sure.
We appreciate those programs, too, creating some signing day drama for us, because we have 9 hours of content to fill tomorrow, and trust me, it's not going to be difficult. Don't forget, join us for our signing day show tomorrow. We kick things off at 9 a.m., and trust me, you're going to want to tune in for that first hour. We're going to whip around to so many different places, coast to coast, and thank you, as always, for watching us here, and be sure to join us on Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. We probably won't be in person for all of the shows, but we did enjoy this, and I do enjoy the time with you, Blair. Thank you so much. Again, he is Blair Angulo. I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.